So yeah, we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll do introductions first. I'm Robbie with Delta.
Ken Austin, I'm with Discovery Builders out of Tennessee.
Joel Allam with New West Building Company out of Park City, Utah.
I'm Bogdan Tomilevsky, Collega Architects, Collega Build out of Los Angeles.
And Barrett with Delta Millworks, Technical Advisor.
Yeah, so we're going to be covering various topics today. Thanks again to the architect panel. That was just amazing. So hopefully we can live up to that one, but that was just great content. So thank you so much. Yeah, so as they touched on in the architect panel, you know, you can have a great design, you can have a great wood siding product, but, you know, to really see long-term success, you know, really we're talking about decades with some of these products that are on the market these days. You know, they're designing wood siding products to last 30, 40, 50, even 60 years. So the technology has really changed over the last 10, 20 years. However, you know, proper handling and proper installation of these materials is critical. You can have a high-performing product like a Koya, Luna wood, that could be a 30, 40, 50-year wood, but if it's not installed properly, it's not going to last that long, and you're going to see issues sometimes pretty quickly. So today, I think we're going to talk about, you know, best practice. These gentlemen kind of span the country from California to, you know, dry mountain climates. Kenneth here has kind of worked all over the world, really. So what different approaches are taken in different regions, and, you know, something that's also interesting is just how things have changed. Rain screens are relatively new, even, you know, 10 or 20 years back. You know, rain screens were not always used. Fasteners are a big topic. How wood reacts to the environment, even with high quality modified woods, you got to take into consideration environmental conditions. So yeah, guys, I guess, you know, we want to have an organic chat. Feel free to raise your hand and make a comment or question. We'd love the audience's involvement here. So yeah, guys, I mean, what are, you know, let's talk about challenges. What could go wrong? What have you seen happen in the field to wood? Was it the quality of the wood? Was it something with the installation, the wall envelope, moisture issues, etc.? Joel, how about we start with you?
Yeah, so we run into this all the time. Typically, we're seeing rain screens get spec'd a lot more, but not everyone is spec'ing rain screens, and every time we do deviate from that, we always regret it. We get a lot of movement, and usually due to the moisture being retained in the wood, swelling, buckling, different attachments, and the rain screen is really the best application we've seen for the install, and we typically like to use Core Event is the product we use. I know that there's lots of different products out there, different depths, different like applications, the roll-on, all of that, and it's all a great product. And Barrett could talk a little bit more about that, and kind of he gets to see that firsthand and talk to everyone about what the best products are and what he's seeing. So you want to talk on that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, you know, my job at Delta really is to, you know, set these expectations and, you know, provide resources for not only the wood material, but for all of the products that are used to install the material. all the way back to even sheathing, people asking me for sheathing recommendations and stuff like that. But yeah, there's so many different rain screen products on the market. Corvent is a great one. It's always good to mention that these plastic products don't provide any bite or holding power, for the system. So that needs to be addressed, right? So if you're screwing or nailing through these plastic products and only into your sheeting, you're relying on 1/2 inch of solid wood to hold all of your wood. Is that enough for your climate? In some cases, yes. In others, no. We try to get over that 1/2 inch, closer to 1 inch or 1.25 inches of penetration into solid wood with your fasteners. And yeah, one of the products that I'm really becoming a big fan of that I think we chatted about a few weeks ago, Joel, is this Keen, K-E-E-N-E, Keen building products. They have a lot of different rain screen materials and whatnot. So not to plug them as a company, but they, it's a rollable drainage mat product that can be installed horizontally. You literally just staple it onto the sheathing, and it comes in different thicknesses and stuff. And so we're really seeing these days, honestly, the majority of all installation is vertical siding. Horizontal siding is becoming kind of more rare these days. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but obviously the vertical siding requires a different assembly, right? The structure is parallel to the siding, whereas you need a perpendicular structure to attach to. So those are kind of the challenges that I'm seeing in my role lately is vertical siding assemblies, taking into account the assembly depth, right? Because horizontal is easy, you install it straight over the studs with your rain screen, but vertical is going to typically require additional depth to accommodate that rain screen. So I think that's just kind of an interesting topic about vertical siding assemblies. I mean, what are you guys seeing as far as those assemblies go?
So with the vertical siding, we've typically done like the Corvent SV5 on the top and bottom, and then we'll use pressure treated furring strips. Most of our applications are vertical, so we'll put in the vertical battens. We'll try to hit studs with those, and then over that we'll do a horizontal. So that's why we're using the 3/8, so that when we build out, we can get to that 3/4 for the SV5 Corvent. One thing we've really realized over the last few years, especially in Tennessee, is the quality of the framing materials has gone down. So our framers are typically using studs that aren't as straight as they could be, and they're always crowning up when they build their walls, right? So we end up with framing and sheathing that's, it could be 3/4 of an inch in variance across the wall. So we'll actually use the pressure treated so that we can shim our furring and then get a true straight siding application. So that's been our typical practice as of late.
And I mean, I think what's interesting is that this rain screen systems have just kept adapting. I remember we did a vertical installation with like 45-degree strips at one point, like Blinko. We don't do those anymore. We went to different methodologies also. I mean, having that ability to shim has been really big for us also. Coming from the architecture side, being the only architect, and now we're also building, we're seeing all the stuff that everyone here on the panel is seeing a lot. The thickness of the rain screen really depends on and matters to the profiles around your windows, and as a designer or architect, knowing what you're going to want to do and how water's going to go down the face, over the window, down onto the sill, coming back out, is all becomes really important. And also just in general with the rain screen systems, having proper waterproofing of adhering them to the building themselves. So with the plastic systems, we tend to put some type of peel and stick behind those. So if you're penetrating that, you don't have that penetration all the way through your waterproofing. We're actually going to be using this plastic DuraVent type system, the rain vent system, for the first time. Otherwise, we've been doing basically wood siding wood backing for the siding. So that's essentially, we don't always do rain screen. I think the more we've practiced and the the scale of the projects that we've received, we're doing rain screen when we can. I think in California, we're a little bit more fortunate to, as long as you're using wood that's thermally modified and not moving on you, if you have an eave over it, right? Things that are letting the wood dry and get wet at similar intervals is helping a lot more. But our best practice is always go rain screen. And then it becomes how thick is your rain screen? How are those corners made? How are those butt joints made? Always sealing the ends of all the products and such. So that's been our experience.
Yeah, and then I was going to say too, one of the things that we found really important is when you're doing the rain screen, making sure you can get ventilation in all directions and you get air movement both top and bottom. So for years we were doing the rain screen and just doing battens one direction, and it just doesn't work as well. You still get some movement. So if you're able to cross the pattern, or like the core event allows for ventilation in all directions, and then also leaving your gap at the top so you can get that air, that natural airflow, and the siding can dry out in the winter months. We build mainly in mountain climates, so the weather fluctuates like 50 degrees in a day, and it's really really important to have that air movement ability in the siding installation.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, a rain screen, as I think we all know, means an air gap behind the wood siding. It allows the wood to breathe. Wood, a natural product, even the high-performing modified woods that will be delivered at, anywhere from 4 to 6% moisture. So that's a very dry moisture content compared to a standard kiln-dried wood that could be 12 to 15%. Traditionally, even a kiln-dried wood delivered to, Joel's Market in Utah could acclimate down to 8%. When wood loses moisture, it's losing mass, and it'll shrink. So you want to make sure that that shrinking effect happens before the wood's installed, or whatever fastener you use, that wood will react and will move to its natural environment. And yeah, a rain screen is not just having an air gap behind the wood, but top, bottom, and even edges. You want to allow the wood to breathe. And I think where you are at in the U.S., your climate and environment is very important. Akoya is rolled out a new guide about rain screens, and in very dry climates, we would still recommend a rain screen, but you could get away with a 1/4 inch because of the dry air. In somewhere like Seattle or Washington with lots of rain and high humidity in the air, you really want a true 3/4 inch gap for more breathability and airflow behind the wood there.
I mean, what I really like about Delta products is the fact that coming in pre-finished is a big help. I remember doing a lot of projects out of Ipe and Kumru, those ironwoods with Penafin, and putting Penafin on right before you get them installed, and we usually took them to our pre-manufactured or pre-stained people to do their first pass, all 4 sides. Then we put them up, do another sealer on them or another impregnating oil on them, and then 6 months later again, and then a year later, and then hopefully to the point where you get it to 2 years later. But with these products, we don't have to have that other stop. And I think that's kind of great for us because, number one, we're doing so many samples with you guys to get the colors we want, the textures we want already. And now we're getting it delivered to the job site, and it's on a pallet ready to go, as opposed to going to the, pre-stainer, then getting put back on a truck and then going to our spot. So I think that's also really helping us to be able to keep projects going. We know lead times on a lot of things these days are not as fast as anyone probably would want to be. So I think that's also a benefit there as well. Takes away the finishing on site, which is we try to avoid at least.
I'd like to build on that. So I fully agree. Getting the pre-finished product is hands down the way to go. We often find when it's finished in the field, those finishes fail or the material fails. And previous to Tennessee, I was in Turks and Caicos. Previous to that, I was in the Bahamas. So, I've been in a few different climates where we have tried to finish on site, and it's always a headache. You're dependent on your labor force, who in Turks and Caicos, it's heavily a Haitian labor force, don't speak English, so you have translation problems, and trying to get them to understand the product, the process is a challenge, whereas we can really bring in a pre-finished product from Delta. We're guaranteeing the longevity of the owner's build at that point.
Yeah, we've also seen that sealing your product uniformly really has an effect on longevity and movement in the siding, and whether you're sealing it on all four sides, sealing your cut ends is really big in allowing that material to dry out uniformly. And with that airflow, it really helps reduce any sort of movement and gapping. And
I think that's a good point. Yeah, back to, pre-finished wood. I mean, it's come a long way, which is great. I mean, it really means having a product that's basically ready to install. Depending on the wood, there may be an acclimation process, but, historically, whether it's been, delivered to the job site and then sent to a pre-finisher, we've seen raw cedar being installed and then just finished on one side. That's, even with a high quality coating, that's definitely not recommended. Just because of the nature of the wood, you want to seal all sides, and definitely the back side as well. Even though it's not exposed, you want a balanced wood product that is, in theory, reacting evenly to the natural conditions. So, we're talking about, moisture, having an acclimated product up. Another thing we see a lot, I think Joel mentioned it, but sealing the cut ends of the wood. When this pre-finished wood is delivered on site, you'll trim the ends, you'll clean up the ends, you'll cut to length, but it's pretty crucial to seal the cut ends. Once again, even with high performance woods, that's a best practice. Wood will enter through those cut ends if it's not sealed. Another thing that that's not always done, but would be another best practice recommendation relating to the ends of the boards, is doing a hairline gap, whether it's a vertical installation or a horizontal installation. Just really offsetting those ends so it's not tight. Even if you are sealing those cut ends, that'll be a moisture trap. So long term, there will be some either degradation of the wood. More so, you'll probably see some fading of the finish, and that's something that whether it's a credit card gap or whatever, people don't want to do that because they want a nice tight seam, but even a 32nd of an inch or less, just something that allows that moisture not to be trapped so much at the ends of the wood. At the end of the day, moisture is one of the biggest killers of wood. We talk about sealing the cut ends. We also talk about, not bringing the wood directly down to grade. If you are, not bringing it down to soil or other materials that will wick up, splash up, and that wood will absorb the moisture, discolor the wood, etc. Go ahead.
I mean, something for me on that, and I'm wondering how you guys react to this also, but it's all about expectations with our clients, and being the architect and the builder on this, we have the ability to talk to our clients and tell them these things. There's going to be gaps in these areas, that we're going to do the corners a certain way, whether we're mitering them and closing them in, or whether we're doing some type of other aluminum profile. I guess my question to you guys is, do you get that kind of hands-on when you're not the architect as the builder? Do you talk to the architect directly? They talk to your clients to manage those expectations? Because I feel like at the end of the day, it's you never want someone to walk up somewhere and I didn't know I was going to get that, right? So I mean, I think my perspective is a little bit different because all we build is our own projects, so we're managing internally a little bit like more cohesively than multiple, I guess, points of contact.
Yeah, for us, we're kind of at the mercy of the architects, but what we do is build mock-ups and kind of incorporate our best practices within the mock-ups. Delta is amazing with mock-ups and samples, and they always turn them around really quickly and get us bigger boards if we need them. And we can build a small wall. Usually we try and have a window corner in there. Do it with the rain screen so everyone can see what the detail is going to look like, what our spacing looks like, gapping, everything. And it really helps be able to point to it for the installers, for the homeowners, for the architect, and everybody agrees on it. So mock-ups are huge for us in the custom market.
We also do a lot of mock-ups. A lot of my projects, I've been fortunate to work directly with the architect and the owners and build through the design process with them. So it gives us the ability as a builder to also have a say in the details and how it's put together, and bring the on-field education to A, the architect, B, the client.
Yeah, to chime in on mock-ups, we cannot stress them enough. It's a relatively simple measure to, once again, set expectations. You know, we send out samples. It can start with a 6-inch sample or a few of them. You know, we've seen in the past where, you know, an order will be placed off, you know, one 6-inch sample, and whether it's variation in the wood, the color of the finish, you know, having a mock-up, whether it's 4 foot by 4 foot or 5 by 5, really helps everyone involved really see the variation in the color, the grain, and you know, work with the installers to, you know, install that, to have a, you know, a practice session of you know, using the right fastener. You know, on a tongue and groove, we've had calls about, well, the angle is not right, and you know, when without a mock-up, and if a truckload of wood is delivered to a job site, you know, people want to hit the ground running and are more sensitive if there's, you know, any concerns with the appearance of the wood or how it's installed. So mock-ups, I would include those on any and every project. Barry, you want to talk about fasteners? Sure. That's one of the things we tend to see issues with at times.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, historically, a lot of wood siding has been installed with what we call finish nails, as most of you are familiar with. 15-gauge finish nail can tend to be a problematic, or in most cases, is a very problematic fastener. The problem with those finish nails is that they are they're not ring shanked. They're smooth, so the wood pulls out over time. There's nothing to grip into the substrate. So as far as nails go, we really recommend a ring shank siding nail. That extra, those ring shanks are going to give it a lot of extra ability to grip into the substrate. So that's as far as nails goes. And then trim head screws. We love screws. It's always important to, you know, recognize what profile you're choosing, how that's going to affect your, you know, fastener decision. You know, shiplap requires a face fastener. So, you know, we typically like to recommend screws, trim head screws. We like Simpson Strong Ties color matched screws that are painted, and we have a full catalog of color matching to match our finishes. So, you know, a gray head to match the gray siding. So it's a really great choice for that. For all fasteners, it's always stainless steel. You know, you can. Some people can get away with a hot dipped galvanized, but we really just try to stress fully stainless steel for all fasteners. That's can really be an issue that we see quite often, is the staining, right, that comes from those fastener heads. So again, setting the expectations with the client, with the owner. You know, do you want hidden fasteners? Do you want blind fasteners? Do you want exposed fasteners? If we choose shiplap, there's going to be exposed fasteners. Are you okay with that? I think that a lot of times these things can be overlooked without really. Yeah, there's so many mysteries that are solved through a mock-up. The angle of the gun, the pressure of the gun, the angle of shooting that fastener, the realizing, oh wow, we specified a shiplap profile. This is going to have an exposed nail or a screw. So I think that again, these are details that come through solving that are solved through mock-ups, but also understanding very early on in the process what you're specifying with your customer.
I think with the fasteners, it's also location within the product. So you talked about using blind fasteners, and on an Akoya product, I would use blind fasteners all day long. But if I was using cedar, I won't use a blind fastener. I will actually face screw it, and that's because of the expansion and contraction, which I can't control. If we're blind fastening through a tongue, when that material shrinks, often it'll break away from those fasteners at the tongue location, which then just leaves that wood flopping in the wind. So we kind of vary our application based on the material that we're putting up. Further to that, the color, we notice, obviously like a darker stain on a cedar is going to move a lot more than a lighter stain. So we take that into consideration as well when we're selecting our fastener location.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That not too much, but in some ways the choice of your wood product, the species that you choose, is going to somewhat dictate fastening locations or requirements. For example, a Akoya product, we love working with. A very popular product for us. It's going to have slightly less severe, requirements for those fasteners, as far as a 1x8, for example. For any other species may require a face fastener because it's such a wide board. But in Akoya, they're comfortable with, in most climates, and not in severe climates, but they're comfortable with that just still through the tongue with a blind fastener. So yes, cedar moves differently than Akoya, and thermally modified woods move differently. So understanding what you're choosing and how that's going to affect fasteners, assembly, everything. So.
Barrett, I have a question for you. Often we get requests from architects to have completely concealed fasteners on cedar and other woods, and we've had some disastrous results even after getting signed off from engineers and stuff on fastening. What do you guys recommend for that, if anything?
Yeah, I always like to tell people that there's truly no such thing as an entirely hidden fastener system. Meaning that the starter board, your bottom board, or if you're going vertical, the first board you put up, there's nothing to hold the bottom of that board from folding up or coming up, right? So in any case, you're always going to have at least one board with a face fastener. But yeah, as far as hidden fasteners go, we run tongue and groove all day long. It's the best profile for that. That's honestly why most people choose, in my opinion, tongue and groove. It's easy to install. You can shoot the nails quickly, and then also it allows for a blind fastener system. But yeah, a good reminder that we are a custom shop here at Delta. We do custom profiles all the time. We have hidden clip systems. I won't go into detail about which systems those are right now, but same thing with decking, Ipe clip systems, for hidden fastener look. But yeah, lots of flexibility there with our milling department to kind of accommodate whatever you're really going for.
Yeah, hidden fastener would be a 1x4 or 1x6 on average, TNG that's blind nailed. Any questions or comments about, but any input? That's okay. All right, there we go. Nice one.
Maybe this is a weird place to ask this, but for like shingles and rain screens, how does that differ from like a slide?
We don't work with shingles too much. Usually shingles are installed directly to, I think, the substrate. Are there rain screen systems for shingles? I mean, I guess you could do like the Keen product that you mentioned.
Yeah, just like a drainage mat product is probably what we recommend for that. So it's that bumpy mesh material that's between a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch thick or even thicker. But yeah, we don't see a lot of shingles these days. Yeah.
In the Caribbean, we did a lot of shingle actually, and we did it 2 different ways. We would do a rain screen behind a layer of plywood, and then we'd install the plywood and nail the shingles to that. Or we've done just the batten spaced out, so a horizontal batten spaced out similar to what you would do on a roof.
Yes, sir.
Ted?
We have a project we're working on now, where we have some Delta siding in the porch, going down to probably a concrete floor. Siding, we want to get it really close to that, just to the floor. I'll have a recommendation for that too. Would you put like a metal piece in there?
Yeah, so the
Or a minimum gap?
Yeah, so the question was, you know, as siding meets, you know, hardscape or softscape, the different requirements there. Yeah, as it meets softscape is really when we want that larger clearance. We call it 8 to 12 inches minimum. Really important detail, honestly. And then as far as hardscape goes, yeah, we'll usually recommend 1 inch to 2 inches gap. So you can still get it close. Obviously, sealing those end cuts, taking into account if it's vertical siding, all of your ends are coming down to the floor, so those ends are going to be experiencing more moisture impact than a horizontal board, right? So taking that into account, sealing those ends, and I always tell people that if you can, if it's part of the design and fits within, then having a metal flashing at the bottom, which will drain the moisture, but most importantly, it'll deflect splash into those end cuts.
Yeah, we usually do a piece of flashing that goes down to the concrete, and then your weather barrier behind your siding goes down over the flashing, and then your siding over with your gap. And it also creates a nice finished look on that 1 inch gap, is typically how we do that.
Another thing that we encounter and you know, address on a fairly regular basis is just job site storage and handling. You know, before the wood is even installed, there can be issues. You know, here at Delta, we wrap our crates. We build our crates pretty solidly, and we wrap them in you know, a lumber tarp. But you know, that does not mean that these crates are waterproof, and even if they were waterproof, you don't want, in theory, even with high performance woods, you know, a crate to sit outside, not just a concern with rain and moisture, but sun exposure. You know, you want to put these totally undercover. In a perfect world, we've seen people, you know, build a little, you know, tent with the lumber tarp. You want this wood to have as much airflow as possible. Once again, ideally in a garage or somewhere covered. If it is outside, if you don't have a covered structure to store it, you know, build a makeshift tent. It'll really preserve the quality of the wood. You know, very often we'll see wood sit on a job site for 1, 2, 3 months before it's even installed. So even with the high performance pre-finished wood, you want to make sure it's stored properly. We've seen wood get rained on, which can stain the finish, whether it's a pre-finished wood or not. Also, you know, seeing an unmodified softwood like cedar, and you know, even in dry climates, you know, if you have a bundle of wood wrapped in plastic, it's going to experience really a greenhouse effect. So we've sent cedar up to dry climates, and you know, it's stored out in the sun, you know, in Montana summer for a period of time, and that cedar will gain moisture, and then, you know, they call us and ask why it's, you know, up to 20% moisture, or they install the wood and it starts to shrink. So, that's just another best practice with any wood. Make sure it's stored and handled properly. It'll just go a long ways for the integrity of the wood. Obviously, we don't want it getting rained on. I mean, these woods and coatings are waterproof and designed to last decades, but sitting in a pallet with long-term moisture exposure is not good. And like I said, sitting out in the sun, especially wrapped in plastic, will introduce more moisture to the wood. So job site storage is very important. And there's we see all sorts of stuff happen on a job site. Make sure that the people not just installing the wood, but working around either the pallets or the loose pieces of wood, know what they're looking at. We see stuff stacked in dirt, and all sorts of wild and crazy things on a job site can happen. And back to a mock-up briefly, cannot stress that enough. And with that mock-up, I mentioned grain and appearance of the wood and the consistency of the color. Just make sure the installation crew, sometimes these install crews can consist of several people. We here at Delta, we put a lot of emphasis in our technical guides. I think it's a 40-something page guide at this point. So take the time to read it and, educate the people handling the wood and working around the wood. And let's not forget that wood is a natural material. If it's a clear grade, which means free of knots, and usually there's allowances for some small knots here and there, and clear vertical grain cedar, you will still get a knot here and there. So that goes back to expectations that we do our best to set with the clients, with the architects, with the owners. But spend a few minutes working with the installation team. Hey guys, here's the general characteristics of this wood. It's a natural material. We're running miles of wood through here. We do strict quality control at the 5 or 6 stations that it's going through. But even with a clear product, if there's a knot, make sure that expectation is set, or set the expectation to cut around it. And the color of the wood, once again, going back to mock-ups, cedar can have blonde, orange, dark streaks in it. So you have one piece of cedar or one piece of reclaimed barnwood, that's not going to be indicative of the full-scale appearance of the wood. So working with us through the sampling process, through the mock-up process, for setting those expectations and the character color of the wood, and passing that on to the end client and the installers, so the installers can have kind of their final layer of quality control. We try to deliver products that are 99% usable, meat grade, but with these some of these large siding packages, if there's a bad board or a bad knot or obviously a check or a crack in the wood, we want to make sure that's addressed.
One of the things that I've done wrong before on the mock-ups is using all of your best pieces to build the mock-up. I always now like to make sure you throw in like a knot or something that's a little bit different, just to set that expectation, and it's burned me before.
Any other questions?
What's the next most exciting thing in wood? What do we see? What are we going to see 5 years from now that isn't we're not talking about today?
That's a good question, Todd. He asked, what's the the next advancement or most exciting thing in wood? you know, I think playing off of wood modification, we have Akoya, we have, you know, really some established thermally modified woods out of Europe. But, you know, hopefully in the next 5 or 10 years, we're looking at more U.S. production of, you know, thermally modified domestic wood species. You know, there's still a ways to go, but, you know, Luna Wood, for anyone who doesn't know, is, you know, has partnered with Atlanta Hardwoods out of Georgia, so they're opening up kilns. They're going to be producing wood in May using American poplar and ash, and they're exploring southern pine. So I think that would be, you know, a huge advancement. We work with Akoya and Luna Wood and woods from British Columbia for a reason, because of the characteristics and qualities and beauty of that wood. But hopefully, you know, we're using more domestically sourced, more local woods that, you know, have that 30 or 40-year performance. And yeah, I mean, I think that's the first thing I would say. And, you know, other than that, I think more mass timber construction. We are not directly involved in mass timber technologies. We work on a lot of those projects applying cladding, but you know, I personally think that is a long-term trend in design and construction. And, you know, once again, mass timber is utilizing fast-growing, affordable, sustainable softwoods to make glue-lam timbers, cross-laminated timber panels, and I think that's a great trend, long-term, not going away. I mean, just here in East Austin, I think there's 3 or 4 mass timber office buildings either built or going up. And thirdly, I'll give a quick shout out to Travis and Safer Wood. They're out of Washington State. They've been in business longer than we have, but they're a clean chemical treatment on wood. It's a pressure treated product to make it non-combustible. Class A rated product. You know, unfortunately, that's a big topic these days is fire hazard, WUI and otherwise. I mean, we met with Austin Fire Department a few days ago, and, you know, Austin's basically a full-scale WUI zone these days. So, you know, we're working diligently here at Delta to work with Safer Wood and, you know, roll out a Class A collection here that, you know, really stays ahead of the curve on these fire issues we're dealing with. You know, the fire topic we could do a whole seminar on, and, you know, wall envelopes and, you know, what's behind the wood. Is that non-combustible or combustible? So there's a lot of ways to address fire and making homes and siding more fire resistant. But I think a product like Safer Wood, and they're really a league of their own. There's not too many people doing what they're doing to introduce Class A products. So yeah, great question. I think domestic thermally modified woods is hopefully a good trend in the next few years, hopefully led by Luna Wood. And mass timber, you know, that's a market that's continuing to grow. And yeah, more Class A treated wood with a clean, non-toxic chemical process. You know, that's going to be really a standard someday, whether we like it or not. Barrett, guys, anything else? You know, future of wood siding and trends? I know we're running up on our time here.
You mentioned earlier about sourcing wood from British Columbia and Europe. I just wanted to know, like, is there a reason why you source from there versus, like, forestry within the U.S.?
Good question. Mike asked, why do we get wood from British Columbia and versus U.S. And that's a big topic these days with all this tariff talk. With I think the goal is to utilize more domestic woods than Canadian and other international sources for wood. The answer to that is how the trees grow. And the climates they're grown in. Western red cedar and hemlock and Douglas fir, they all grow in Oregon and Washington and Idaho. But it's a different climate. Colder temps in British Columbia, older trees, they grow slower, tighter growth rings, they're denser woods, they're higher performing, more natural resins in the wood, which add rot resistance and longevity to the wood. That's kind of the short answer there. We've explored most domestic woods for what we do, which is mainly exterior siding and decking. So we're trying to work with woods that last a lifetime, but the quality of the Western red cedar, for example, sourced from the U.S. is it's not the same product as the wood coming out of British Columbia. So, good question there. Yes, sir. One more time, Ted.
I think of another trend is like renovating older buildings. Do you see any conflicts happening? Like you have these new standards of systems, it's like a ring screen. Renovating an older building, do you see any problems arising from outfitting it with like a ring screen? Have you guys started to experience it?
I mean, most of our projects are new builds. In theory, no. I mean, renovating an older building always presents, new and different concerns than building something from the ground up where you have, really total control. Barrett, any thoughts on that? I mean, we don't. It's not something we get a lot of calls on. We do remodels, of course, of residences, but.
Yeah, I mean, we're mostly dealing with new construction, of course. One thing I learned recently is that I didn't know is houses back in the 60s, especially in California, used to be built without exterior sheathing. So I didn't know that. They put the house wrap right over the studs and then fasten the siding straight up against that, right? So that there really is no rain screen there. So I guess that's one thing that came to mind when you brought that up is sometimes with some of these older renovations from houses back in the 50s, 60s, probably a good idea to add some sheathing there for not only for shear but also to build a proper rain screen. So I think that when you're talking about rain screen, it's not just obviously it's the air gap, but it's the components that generate that air gap with the furring strips and sheathing and house wrap and all of these products we talked about earlier. So that's the only thing that came to mind there.
Thanks everyone for joining. Nice work, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks for joining.